Welcome back to NBC3 News at 6. The family of Gary Thibodeau will hold a funeral for him Saturday afternoon in Oswego, a week from Saturday. He died Sunday evening after spending 23 years in prison after being convicted of kidnapping Heidi Allen in 1994. This was Thibodeau 3 weeks ago today. During this last interview from Coxsackie Correctional, he said, "They know I didn't do it," referring to Oswego County investigators. Heidi Allen was last seen alive on Easter Sunday, 1994. A jury convicted Gary Thibodeau in her kidnapping a year later. Gary's brother, Richard, was the last known customer at the convenience store where she worked. A jury found Richard not guilty. About 5 years ago, new evidence developed pointing to 3 other men as possible suspects in Heidi's disappearance. Federal public defender Lisa Peebles took on Gary's case and argued in 3 separate courts, but was unable to win him a new trial before his death. She was in prison by his bedside this weekend in the hours before Gary Thibodeau passed away. She still remembers their first meeting.
He maintained his innocence, obviously, the minute I spoke with him. I didn't even question it, to tell you the truth, based on what I had reviewed even prior to meeting him.
Lisa Peebles was armed with a growing list of evidence and statements about 3 other men who could be responsible for Heidi Allen's disappearance.
I think I was a little naive because I hadn't handled a case where I was actually trying to undo a conviction. And in that sense, I think I really didn't know what I was going to be up against. So, yeah, but I continue to be optimistic because I always felt that the legal principles were on our side and that we would eventually win. The question was going to be, where were we going to win? Was it going to be in a state court or a federal court? But I always believed at some point we were going to win.
Her optimism never faded, even as Gary Thibodeau's health did. When we were at the prison 3 weeks ago today, right? When you walked in, Gary's face lit up. What has that meant to you, that unique relationship you had with somebody who's in that position?
You know, Gary's special to me for a number of reasons, and I think not the least of which is his attitude that he's had since I've met him and since I've been working on his case. He's not a bitter person. He's not angry. I mean, there are certain things that get him riled up. There's no question about it. But he's just, even though he was in prison all these years, he's really a relatively happy person.
Peebles feels tunnel vision by investigators forced them into naming the Thibodeaus as suspects early on because Richard was the last known customer at the convenience store. Peebles is certain the true kidnappers are still out there. What about 2 guys who weren't involved? Are you pretty sure about that?
I am absolutely 100% sure Gary and Richard had nothing to do with Heidi Allen's kidnapping. Gary wasn't even at the DNW that morning. And anyone who knows Richard, you could spend 2 minutes with Richard Thibodeau and know right away the man is incapable of committing any sort of violent act. He is one of the nicest people you'd run across. He's anyone's grandfather, uncle, brother. He is just a very quiet, soft-spoken, simple man who's led a simple life and feels responsible for putting his brother in prison for 23 years.
Now that Gary Thibodeau has died in prison, Peebles hopes lessons can be learned from the case.
People make mistakes, and when a mistake is made, you have to be willing to own up to it and recognize, okay, we made a mistake, and fix it, and not try to dig in and just try to be right, because we're not always right.
Peebles says investigators for Oswego County have recently gone back and tested evidence and done interviews with some witnesses. She feels they were still trying to firm up a case against the Thibodeaus. Still, no new evidence has developed to connect him to the case. Gary Thibodeau's funeral is a week from Saturday.